Our moon is dying. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. But scientists have discovered huge cracks spreading across its surface, and it could break into pieces. This might sound like the plot of a disaster movie, but it's actually science. Scary. So much so that some researchers think the destruction of the moon could spell the end for us humans. Here are just a few of the ways our world would be thrown into total chaos if the moon split in half. We know that the moon is slowly drifting away from Earth. In about 50 billion years, it will be so far away that it can no longer be considered our satellite. But long before that happens, something else could take the moon out of our planetary system. Our moon, along with Earth, formed about 4.5 billion years ago after a Mars-sized planet smashed into our young world. Ever since they've been orbiting each other, gravity keeping them locked in a celestial embrace. But there are signs that this cosmic coupling isn't as stable as we once thought. Scientists recently identified what they believe to be the youngest impact craters on the moon. 2 huge new holes punched through the lunar surface. And while their formation may have been caused by random chance, they also may be signs of something more sinister. Some astronomers think that these new craters are evidence of something big, very big, shattering the moon. We may not have witnessed this moon-shattering event ourselves, but according to some theories, it might have happened long before human beings existed. In 2013, researchers used computer models to simulate the early history of the moon and Earth's system. They found that the giant impact theory could also explain strange features on the moon's surface, such as vast lava fields and a mysterious tilt on the moon's axis. But it turns out that this collision may have been even more dramatic than previously thought. Instead of one planet slamming into another, it may have been a 3-way crash. According to researchers, there was likely a third body involved, something about 10 times the mass of Earth. Their simulation suggests that this massive object struck the proto-Earth, and then the debris from that impact got gravitationally tugged into orbit by another passing planet. Over millions of years, the chunks of rock gradually came together to form the moon. This means that instead of being a single piece of rock, the moon is basically a big pile of space rubble held together by our planet's gravity. Now, this doesn't mean the moon is going to fall apart tomorrow. But in the next few billion years, something could come along and knock it completely out of orbit. If that happened, the effects on Earth would be catastrophic. Without the moon, our planet would experience extreme climate change. Since the moon is our natural satellite, it influences ocean tides. It's the second most powerful force affecting tides after the sun. If the moon were to break apart or drift away, ocean currents would be dramatically altered, disrupting marine life and coastal ecosystems. But changes would go far beyond the water. The moon has been a stabilizing force in our planet's history, helping to keep Earth's axial tilt at a moderate 23 degrees. This is important because if the tilt were too great or too small, Earth's climate could become inhospitable. It would either become an ice cube or a hot potato. As it is, the moon helps keep Earth's temperature relatively steady over billions of years. It's even thought that the presence of the moon may have helped life emerge on our planet. Researchers found that tidal action powered by lunar gravity may have concentrated organic molecules and nutrients on the early Earth, providing the building blocks for life. Basically, without the moon, life as we know it might not exist. But even if you're confident that humanity will survive a moonless future, you wouldn't be able to say the same about the global food supply. That's because the moon also influences the length of a day. Without its gravitational pull, days would be significantly shorter, lasting only about 6 hours. Plants and animals that rely on a 24-hour cycle might not be able to adapt quickly enough to the sudden time change, throwing off the entire food chain. And that's not all. The moon is home to millions of tons of water ice, which could be harvested for drinking water, oxygen, and rocket fuel. It's possible that these resources could help support human expansion into space. But if the moon breaks apart or drifts away, these valuable assets will be lost forever. Okay, so maybe the moon splitting in half would be pretty bad for humanity. But how could this happen? Scientists believe there are 2 possible fates that could cause our satellite to shatter. One is getting too close to the sun. While the moon doesn't orbit around the sun, it does travel around Earth's orbit every year. If it gets too close to our star, the intense heat and radiation could weaken the bonds that hold the moon together. Another threat is being hit by a large asteroid. There are millions of asteroids zooming around the solar system, and some of them pass dangerously close to Earth every year. If one of these space rocks slammed into the moon, it could be big enough to rip our satellite apart. Researchers have been keeping an eye on one particular asteroid named 2010 AF36. It's about 7 miles wide and orbits the sun every 324 days. It makes multiple close passes by Earth, including one coming up in 2029. And scientists think this asteroid might be a former satellite of the moon, captured long ago and flung into deep space by gravitational Will it return to smash into our satellite? Perhaps. But here's the crazy thing. The moon is constantly shedding material, creating a thin stream of rock and dust that extends almost halfway to Earth. This process, called exospheric erosion, is caused by solar wind and radiation. The stuff that makes up this thin atmosphere is so light that it can escape the moon's gravity and float away into space. What's more, the material shed by the moon adds up. It combines with other debris in Earth's orbit to form a thin layer of rock and dust called the This ring of material is so extensive that it extends more than 6,200 miles from Earth's surface. And that means that if the moon ever did break apart, the consequences for our world could be even worse than we thought. In 2020, scientists took a closer look at the geocorona and found that it's made up of actual chunks of the moon. These bits of rock are less than 1/50th the width of a human hair, and they aren't evenly distributed. They tend to gather near the center of the geocorona, forming dense clumps. If the moon were to crack and crumble, these particles would join the mix and potentially trigger a chain reaction. That's because the rock in the geocorona is mostly exposed iron, and when iron is bombarded by charged particles from the sun, it can release electrons. These negatively charged electrons would start clumping together. Eventually, they'd become heavy enough to form large clumps of space dust that could block the sunlight. If this happened, Earth would be plunged into darkness for months. Photosynthesis would grind to a halt, and the food supply chain would collapse. But if this weren't bad enough, there's another effect to consider. The geocorona is in constant motion. Winds in this upper layer of Earth's atmosphere move around the planet at speeds of up to 120 miles per hour. And these winds carry with them tiny bits of rock from the moon. When these particles collide with gas molecules, they leave behind a trail of ions. These ions form aurora-like displays of light in the sky, giving our world an eerie glow. So if the moon broke apart and more rock started raining down on us, our skies would be lit up all the time. Of course, that's only if the moon managed to break apart in the first place. Some astronomers think it's simply impossible for our satellite to shatter. Take the big new craters we mentioned earlier. Although they were believed to be the youngest on the moon's surface, more recent studies have suggested that they're actually much older than expected. This means that whatever caused these craters to form wasn't powerful enough to tear the moon apart. But that doesn't mean that there isn't something out there that could do just that. In 2019, scientists studying a meteorite from the moon's surface discovered unusual magnetic signatures. They suggest that our satellite was once much more active, perhaps with a molten core and a powerful magnetic field. If that's true, the moon may have gone through a violent transformation sometime in the past. Maybe something slammed into our world that shook the moon to its core. But whatever it was, it didn't destroy the satellite. It might not have been big enough to do that. So far, no one has been able to answer the question definitively. But one thing is clear, the moon is a fascinating world that continues to surprise us. Whether it breaks apart or stays whole, it will continue to influence the destiny of our planet and its inhabitants. When you think about it, we really don't know all that much about the moon. For most of human history, it looked like an unchanging presence in the sky. And even today, we haven't explored its surface in any kind of detail. The last humans to walk on the moon were almost 50 years ago, during the Apollo era. If we want to learn more about our world's origins, we need to get back there. Fortunately, NASA and other space agencies are already planning to send astronauts back to the moon in the next few years. Sometime in the next decade, brave explorers will set foot on the lunar surface again. Maybe they'll even find evidence of the moon's violent past or discover that it's secretly hiding alien life. Anything's possible when you're dealing with the universe. If you want to learn more about the incredible forces shaping our world, stay tuned for more information.